in a second. Good. So I think we are online now, and I would like to therefore welcome you all to our presentations from the first year short course at the University of Innsbruck at Synthetic Landscape Lab, the department of Claudia Pasquero that is joining us here for presentations. We have 5 different teams led by 5 different teachers, which is me, Teresa Greskova, then we have Konstantinos Alexopoulos, and we have Stefan Siegel, together with Vadim, Apostolos, another, and Filippo Nasetis. So we are quite a rich team of teachers leading the first year students through different topics. Each project that you will see will be from different background, from a different group, as this is a mixed review. So we will have an overview of what was going on parallel in each of the 5 different courses. And I would like to welcome all our guests who come as a critique and a reviewer of the project. As I mentioned, Claudia Pasquero, that is present here with us, Marco Poletto, also connecting from London, co-founder of Ecologic Studio, and Maria Kuptsova, that is joining us, also our fellow colleague of PhD student and researcher. And also happy to invite Anna-Rita Papesci that is coming and joining us from Innsbruck, but is based in London. And I already introduced you a little bit when you joined. So I'm looking forward to see your presentations and waiting for the comment on the projects. We would start with the first group from Apostolos.
Hello from me as well to the guests and to the new students. Maybe I should introduce the brief in 1 second.
Yes, thank you.
The title of the studio is called Urban Semantics, and it is about analyzing the way that the students use the urban space. Some of the students were not based in Innsbruck, so they try to analyze the way that they use the city in the different scales and different in the different cities. And the aim of the studio is to produce an analysis that can be later, maybe in another project, used as a proposal for different mobility plans and so on. The interesting part about the group that I chose for this presentation is that there is a nice conversation between the way that we use the city in the COVID-19 context, as well as the way that we used to use the city before the COVID-19. So I would give the word to the group 5. Maybe you can start your screen sharing.
Yes, just wait a moment. I need permission to share my screen.
You can share the screen now.
So can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I think we can start now. Linda?
Yes. So our task was to choose one facility in the city. Our choice was fitness studios, and to track our daily route and then analyze the connection between them. Our motto for the project was USA, so university, students, and sport activities. And here you can also see a glimpse at our final map, but we will come back later to that. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, here you can see an overview of our drawings of the first 4 weeks. In the first week, we showed all the fitness studios in Innsbruck. Then we added our tracks of our daily routes and the locations of the universities. In week 3, we added the parks and changed the colors and also changed the background. In week 4, we changed the colors again and also added some details. Yeah, the programs we used were mostly Rhino and the plugin Grasshopper. And for definitions, we used Adobe Illustrator, and for our book bits, Adobe InDesign. Yeah, in each week we learned more technical details, which is also represented in our drawings. So you can really see a development, and each week the maps get more informative.
So why did we choose the slogan USA, University, Students, and Sport Activities? We have given a lot of thoughts to what we can connect students with. Sport is generally very important for a person's health, body, and the balance. Students have to do a lot. Because of the pandemic, they sit a lot in front of the computer and at home. In addition to sports, rest is also an important factor. In the parks, students can stay, enjoy the nature, and relax. Therefore, we have shown the possible sports activities and reaction places in the drawing. The blue circles show the way from each flat address to the university and to the different sport facilities and the parks. As you get closer to a sport activity, the circles get bigger. In addition, we have shown the shortest walking distance to an activity within 600 meters of the tracks.
So, in Corona time, students changed their behavior regarding to sports and recreation. That means less indoor and more outdoor. So for this reason, we created 2 additional drawings to show the indoor and outdoor facilities separately. The first picture shows the location and the distribution of the indoor sports facilities. For example, fitness studio like the Fit or Fit In, indoor swimming pool, or sports centers for yoga and judo and so on. And as expected, most of the indoor facilities are located in the downtown area. It's quite concentrated in the city. So the second picture, on the other hand, shows the outdoor sports facilities. For example, soccer pitch, outdoor swimming pool, or some running grounds. And the parks in Innsbruck is also included. In contrast to the indoor facilities, we can see that those are located mostly outside the city. So our last slide. If you compare the first drawing with our final drawing, so you can hopefully see that we have made some improvement regarding to Rhino and Grasshopper. Especially the programming of Grasshopper with the visual interface is a great experience for us. So let me summarize our project. In this project, we have shown the relationship between the daily road to the university of the students and the next sports facilities along our road. So don't be lazy, just going out and doing sports. Thank you.
Thank you. If you can leave the final map maybe on the large screen.
This one?
Your final, this one, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
What would be the procedure? Do we comment after each project?
Yes.
I think you can comment.
Okay. Well, since I am muted, I can jump in and maybe start the conversation. Thank you guys for the presentation. It was quite streamlined and quite a coherent research. Also, I think the results of like working with mapping are quite beautiful. You did some good progress, and the topic, I think, is super relevant. The topic. Maybe what I would really like maybe to hear from you as a next step, and is an idea, how do you bring it towards at least the project now, and thinking beside the kind of collecting the data on specific sport activities, how do you actually approach it now? So what would be your intention? And especially Innsbruck is a place with this rich sport culture, which includes like hiking, mountain biking, just cycling, snowboarding, and etc. There are so many sport activities which are happening there also as an event, right? And how do, for example, this type of activities as the kind of championships and like all the types of the sport competitions which are running through the city are taking place in this type of scenario, and how does each student that you are saying is connected towards that, and like rethinking the structure of the city through this type of the different kind of behavior of the citizens within the city, and provoking more sport activity. I think that would be really nice, and like also maybe thinking and comparing the scenarios with like a normal case as it was before, and the case which is actually now happening in current days. So yeah, that's maybe what the only point that I was a bit missing, that beside the statements, okay, go out and do the sport, how do you rethink the structure of the city, which is maybe provoking more sport activities happening? But I think that I understand also time-wise that it was difficult to bring this, but maybe this type of research that you've done within the first year might suggest in the next semesters for yourself to continue this research in a larger project.
We spend a lot of time for the programming of the grasshopper. It's not so easy for beginner.
I do imagine.
I think it's still very impressive what you have achieved, and so there is no doubt about it. But I think it's good to learn from day one that the program or the software itself will not do a project for you. So it's important that you begin to question how the algorithmic logics that you can draw through the software become a way for you to visualize, to imagine a project from a different perspective. So if we're talking about sports, of course, most conventional or traditional or classical sports have rules which control the way they develop, and these rules are in some cases algorithmic as well, and but they tend to happen on pitches or courts that are very rigid and fixed in their geometry, in their spatial articulation, right? Then there are sports that are instead more related to landscape, like skiing and so on, which have a different type of relationship with the geography of the terrain. Although I had to say that in many cases, I think the tendency in professional sport is still to create a court or a pitch that is very controlled and that can be used to compete in a kind of fair level. And I think that's what is interesting, maybe, of this type of map that you have drawn. If we are looking at it as a sort of new definition of a sport terrain, that is, in a sense, very much enmeshed with the urban fabric, but at the same time, it's also very algorithmic in nature, so it can change all the time. I think it may kind of open up a different dimension of sport in that sense, and also the relationship between sport and the urban fabric and the way we perceive and engage with cities. And of course, there is already a bunch of sports that have emerged in the urban realm, and that quite spontaneously, you know, like parkour or, you know, skating and so on. But they are not necessarily been framed or recognized or designed in any particular way. I think the relationship between sort of bottom-up, spontaneous way of engaging the urban landscape as a ground or as a terrain for sport versus the way you can draw it or map it through the medium of algorithmic design is a very interesting ground for development, for experimentation, and I think it could also be a very good ground for redevelopment or improvement of the public realm. So, you know, this becomes it could become really a strategy for redesigning cities effectively, from the ground up, from the urban landscape perspective, to then redefine perhaps the architecture fabric itself. So, you know, I think that's for me what is important, that you see this exercise not just as a, you know, tool, you know, experimentation with softwares, but also really as a kind of very first attempt to engage with methodology that has the potential to redefine the city as we understand it today in a very profound way. So maybe even in this kind of a initial stage, you can try to search for these opportunities and begin to discuss among yourself and imagine what these opportunities may be. And I think that's very interesting of this exercise. It does lend itself to that.
I think that what would be relevant to follow up is to understand how this type of maps or algorithmic description that at the moment seems to be still in the analytical realm become operational and have an effect in changing the morphology of the city. In that sense, I would also suggest for the future to enlarge as much as possible the value of the drawing. Maybe I would say we don't need to see final week written so big, but it would be more relevant to be able to see your description better, or to appreciate the quality and variation in your description, and especially the relationship between your description and what exists in the city. I think the question to become a design, it needs to be also very sharp on its graphical representation. So how this flow become a new proposal from the city. And I think to be able to see this flow better and maybe avoid coloring the river as blue, which I don't think it's a relevant graphical information, and avoiding the final week on the side, but rather underlining how your field can maybe go beyond the existing road network, or could transform it in different way depending from the intensity of the activity. Then maybe that could be a way of starting to understand or start to make design operation that would change the landscape. So it's not anymore about traveling from school to the sports space, but the sports space gets more distributed, and it's not a point, but become part of the city as well. And how that could be determined in a small urban conurbation like Innsbruck, where actually there is quite a bit of segregation between what is urban and what is landscape at the moment.
maybe I can add a couple of things, but I have a question. Maybe I don't know. The tutors can answer me. So, for how long this seminar went on? How many weeks? I mean, we're talking like weeks here because we are just mid of November, and this is a year one, right?
Yes, it was 5-week course.
Yeah, so it's I mean, what I want to say is, like, first of all, congratulations, because I think for somebody that, you know, it just kind of new to the field of urban design, urban analysis, architecture, to have like in 5 weeks, you know, to be able to master the complexity of these drawings is it's already like an amazing achievement. And I think what I was very impressed by is the fact that you guys are not just you know, mapping the existence, but in this understanding of the basic logic of this algorithmic mapping, a little script that you have been developing, you are actually kind of starting to make some sort of speculative and predictive sign on the urban. And I think, like, by looking at this, I think what you guys need to really learn here is literally like to kind of embrace this and starting to read it and start to appreciate, possibly, as Claudia was saying as well, like the aesthetic potential that you have. And because in the moment you are actually making a drawing, you're making a map, there is that's your production, and it's not just a communication that is just like how can I say, only objective, but you kind of expand to the multisensorial experience of whoever is looking at this. And so I think that the moment you choose like a representation, the moment you need to kind of it's a sort of aesthetic decision making that you guys are taking a stance on, and that's what you probably need to kind of interrogate and have like a larger understanding. And so what I would suggest you is, like, I think that somehow the bones, the structure of your project is already there in all this kind of algorithmic intelligence that you have kind of little by little discovering, and this amazing learning curve you guys have made. You know, like, it's not simple what you have done. I mean, I know that, but like probably what you need to explore more in this time that separates you from now to the next course that you're gonna take, it's like how does this output can become like a gesture that is a design gesture, that is speculative, that is like you know, like that is in somehow, what's the level of intention as a designer that you have in that? I think that's a very interesting area to consider for the future. But I think this is a very interesting starting point for you, for the team, and well done.
Thank you very much for your comments. If there are no further comments, we could move to the next course that was led by Konstantinos. Konstantinos, please, you can take the word and introduce.
Hello all. So our studio is called Geomorphosis, and which is deriving from the word geo, the Greek, which represents the earth, and the morphosis that has to do with the morphing of the ground itself. Basically, as a narrative, we're selecting specific 10 by 10 kilometers northeast of the center of Innsbruck, close to the Alps. So the students have some different areas in terms of characteristics, and they start trying to map different simple data that they get for the actual landscape, and work on drawings in order to be able to understand the different characteristics, as well as what is the actual condition there. and to be able to transform this kind of data and change them into certain techniques that can potentially alter the morphology of the ground itself. And we had groups that they were more focused in anthropocentric interventions. Some other were more focused in artificial robotic interventions, or others prosthetic interventions. And now we're going to see an intervention that is more focused on time. I think we can start the presentation. So it's David, Marlon, and Carlos who will show you their work.
Yes, hello everyone. And welcome to our presentation. Today we will talk about a small landscape near to Innsbruck, which is an area of 10 by 10 kilometers next to the Aachen Lake, and how it changed over the time. First, we did the elevation analysis from this DEM. Even if the picture is quite blurred, it shows us anyway a good insight of the landscape, especially the height difference become clear in form of using colors like green and brown. And the brown circle shows the highest points of the landscape, in this case, the mountains, and the green circles, the lower and flat areas. Besides, we did the steepness analysis, which shows us the transition between the mountains and the flat area. The brown stroke shows us the steepest spots in this area, and the green strokes, the flatter ones. And in addition of the single layer, we get a very interesting image of the terrain, which is quite simple, but still descriptive. And now I pass the word to Marlon.
So in the following pictures, you can see the ice crystals from the glaciers. Like the first picture is showing only the peaks, and the second picture shows the lower points and more like the structure of the ice. And here you can see both combined. The next picture shows the areas where the terrain and the mountains have the biotic parts. And here you can see the lower parts, like the basement of the mountains, and also both combined. Next picture, it shows the areas that are the wettest by increasing brightness of the circles. For example, the lake is completely white. And here you can see all the areas where water is in general, and also combined, but with an addition of the paths, the water will flow. So this leads us to a short fact check about the important statistics presented by Carlo.
Yes, now we have picked out 3 statistics from the area around the Aachen Lake. First, we see the population development from 2016 to 2019. And here a clear increase in the population can be seen, which shows us the general population growth. And the steady increase in the population supported by tourists, for example, is known to drive climate change, which become also clear if we take a look at the course of the temperature. The rising temperature in turn ensure the snowfall and has been replaced more and more. The rising temperature in turn ensure the snowfall, and it has been replaced more and more by rain in the recent years. Visible if we take a look at the lower 2 courses on this statistic, where the blue course shows us the snowfall and the green one the rain. And we only found the statistic from the certain years, which nevertheless show the overall impression. And next to Dave.
Yeah, we as a group then thought about how our area would transform over a time span of around 1,100 years. So first we want to look at the area 100 years ago. Here you can see a compost drawing, which is a data analysis of the same 10 by 10 area as before, just what we thought it would look like 100 years ago. On this picture, you can see a non-high resolution landscape of the same area in 1920. You can see that there was a lot of snow, which was before human-caused global warming, and only a few buildings, which you can see in red. And then lastly, a satellite picture, where you can also see the snow more clearly. And now I will repeat the same process for the 4 different time scenarios. Here you can see the data analysis of the area in the year 2020 with more buildings than 100 years before and less snow. Then this time around, we made a high resolution landscape. And here you can see the current satellite picture of the year 2020. Then the area 100 years later, and what we believe is that the glaciers are melted by then, and the nearby Arch Lake will get overflowed. Then here you can see the renderings with the buildings more far away from the lake than before. And lastly, the satellite picture with the overflowed lake. Our last scenario is the area 1,000 years later. A scenario that we imagined Earth looking like in the year 3020 is a very pessimistic one. If human-caused global warming won't be stopped, we believe it is possible that Earth will become very, very hot and different species won't be able to survive anymore. Then here you can see a high-resolution rendering of the same scenario. Then here you can see a summary of the data analysis over different years, and I think you can have a quite good understanding of how we thought the area would transform. The same here, just with the renderings. And last but not least, for our presentation, I want to show some detail shots of the 10 by 10 area. First in the year 1920, then in the year 2020, then in the year 2120, and lastly in the year 3020. That's the end of our presentation. We hope we could give you a clear understanding of how we think the 10 by 10 area will transform over the years, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation. Maria, go ahead with comments, please.
Yeah, I don't know. I was waiting when someone else will start. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, for the presentation. I don't know, there is a list of drawings which are just impressive. And the catalogs that you're also making, and they are really suggestive. Now, the drawing itself, I think it has a really good resolution. Also, the way you approach the color, maybe not like in all type of the drawings, but in the majority of that is really working, but also think that the color is information, which we need to read. Now, and what do you actually suggest with the color code? Would be great to have as a specification list on the side of the drawings. And well, graphically, I think that you gave so much of attention to the drawing itself, and you didn't give, let's say, enough of attention to the presentation itself. And how do you treat each slide and all the text aside, the indexes, the scales, and etc. In some cases, they're, well, in the majority of the cases, they're missing. But the information that you are giving on the slide, like a year, should be curated better. Also, I would recommend you in the next steps when you will be working on this type of the drawings, also to work with cataloging. No, because I think the cataloging would help us to read the information in a more like a coherent way. And yeah, you will just enrich your work. So, but nonetheless, I think there's like the quality of drawing is just winning all those negative side effects, because I think they also kind of drawing itself is very suggestive. But I would also point maybe on the way how you discuss the drawing and how do you elaborate kind of and maybe advance the way you talk on the drawings. And I would question this kind of sentences on the human affecting the radical change of the landscape, and think more into this kind of ecosystemic approach. Is it only human, or like because there is plenty of other factors which are basically affecting this evolution of the landscape, the erosion, and all the different scenarios that you are drawing. So maybe I would more discuss the relationship of the human and the landscape, rather than the direct negative effect of the human on the side. So, and there it will help you to look into the other factors and also take them into consideration and discuss them during the presentation. So these are the comments from my side. Thank you very much.
Maybe I can follow up on that, because actually you mentioned that it's a pessimistic scenario, no? But from my perspective, it actually looks like a potentially quite optimistic one. Depends on the point of view. It looks like finally the biosphere has got rid of us, so there is no more houses and humans around, which I think it's good in general for the planet. On the other hand, you will see that it seems like the differentiation of the terrain has increased. Like there are a lot of what looks like crevices and valleys and articulations that I don't see now. So that that leads me to believe that there could be an actual increase in biodiversity in that area, or at least there is a potential for high articulation in terms of microclimate and the niches, ecological niches. And so, potentially, it could be also a scenario that highlights how the mass extinction that is provoked by humans at this moment in time has been overcome by the biosphere, and has created opportunities for a new age of differentiation. Of course, 1,000 years are probably not enough for let's say biological evolution to regain the loss that it's happening now. But at the same time, I think it's intriguing to think that through your digital systems, we may imagine that the biological evolution of this terrain is now aided by other kind of non-human systems, and therefore maybe even accelerated or augmented. And so I think this is a scenario that you're proposing, which, obviously from the perspective of humans may look dystopic. I think from other perspective is actually potentially reach of life opportunities and diversity of creatures, maybe hybrid or cyborgian creatures as well. And in a sense, maybe even more realistic than many other scenarios that we have been hearing in the past weeks, especially, we just came back from the COP, from the conference on climate change in Glasgow, where, of course, the dominant narrative is the one of carbon neutrality and planting trees and so on. And I kind of welcome the fact that you are already proposing a scenario that is much more radical than that. And I think that's really what we need in terms of resetting the conversation from a different point of view. So very good for that. Congratulations.
I really like this project because of its political stance, right? I mean, I think what you guys have done here it's excellent in the terms that you kind of work with this idea of the historical scenario to kind of create some sort of predictive narrative for the future, and it's extremely kind of and thrilling, you know, like it's extremely interesting for whoever is actually listening to this. And I think what once again, what you've learned in these few weeks, it's an outstanding set of tools that you can, that I hope you can kind of, use again and again. I think it's really, really good. What perhaps I would have enjoyed better is the fact if you would have kind of explained, more clearly in a way the methods that you have used in order to kind of pass from a sort of analysis of the past. So you have like two scenarios that are basically today and 100 years ago, and how you are kind of learning from those scenarios in order to kind of predict what's actually happening, which is kind of we all assume by looking at these very beautiful drawings that's what you have done, but perhaps it went a little bit unnoticed in the way you have actually presented. But I think that's really where the strength of the project could be and should be, and where these are really kind of becoming extraordinary tools for communication and for imagining how we can even perhaps start to tune in one way or another, and by hybridizing in which way the system that you are creating, and how we can perhaps start like some sort of conversation with this very complex system that you are describing in your drawings, in order, again, maybe to to change slightly, to adjust, to kind of stimulate certain processes instead than others. So these are all like, so is this the only reality that we can have in 1,000 years? And how, which agency should we play with in order to maybe kind of unravel a different narrative for this land, if there is any interest in doing that, or is it's just kind of the. So I think that's the realm that you are playing with, which is, as I said, it's extremely thrilling and very, very powerful approach to creating like an urban narrative. I think this is outstanding for a year one, guys. Well done.
Thanks. I agree with the other and really beautiful drawing. I have only one question. I wonder how, by looking simply, it's about how the drawing becomes something, beyond the beauty of the drawing and their power to actually describe the narrative of the project. So I wonder how, only by looking at the drawing itself, I would be able to gauge more about the narrative of the project. If I can say something, is that the narrative and the number I see nearby, I guess, is the time. It seems something that I would not be able to understand purely from the drawing. And because, I'm really interested in visual language, I was so captured by the drawing that are really beautiful that I lost half of your words. But on the other hand, I think the final drawing doesn't allow me to see 2020 into it. And okay, you're just first year, this is a little bit too much to ask, but how do I see 2020 on the drawing without the big text on the side? How do I get this perception? How do I get a visual perception of how this would be, or would change, or would maybe not change? I don't know. How do you create a visual language which is not only coherent, but start to talk about the content of your brief as well, much more specific? So, because in this case, you have a very consistent visual language, but is very polite in a way. So how is this visual language allowing you to describe the project by itself. I always make this example from the AA many years ago, when there were a lot of architects and Peter Cook and Za and others studying there. There is this story, and I was actually not still studying there at the time, but there is this story that when somebody will present a project, there will be no person speaking, not the tutor, not the student. The project needs to be understood from the drawing, okay? The drawing is explain the project, and then people start to comment and judge the project, and then maybe other things emerge. But so I think the next step in terms of this project is really to connect the visual narrative with the verbal one, which are good, drive in, somehow they are parallel, but I don't see yet how they intersect more precisely. And this is a very important aspect if you want to discuss aspect of ecology and climate change through design, because that's the contribution we can give, is give relevance to how visual language become a serious tool to politically engage with the transformation the planet is going through. But for the moment, congratulations also on the drawing and the consistency you've developed on this.
I also wanted to shortly congratulate to the team for the project. The imagery is very intriguing, and the only thing I was thinking of when we jumped from the year, I think 2120 to 3020, was I'm sure that you come up with this image through certain type of manipulation of the landscape that you generated and use set of tools. So as a suggestion for visualization of bringing us towards this sort of proposal that we see, as Claudia was now saying, to bring us to understand that this is a future sort of scenario visualization without seeing the big text at the side. I had this, almost a need to see some kind of visualization of how the landscape would change in a set of sort of steps, almost as an animation, or saving your image after every single step of manipulation of the landscape in order to sort of defragment a little bit the changes that are happening in time. And therefore we could get this sort of expanded image of the landscape changes that you imagine. But congratulations for the beautiful work that you have done. I don't know if there are any other comments. Okay, so I think we could move to a next theme, which would come from my studio. You can stop sharing your screen. And I would like to welcome to present Team 5 from my group. Our course was looking at the biodigital landscapes at the region of alpine landscape in a frame of 10 by 10 kilometers. We were choosing this sort of larger frame that was surrounding one of the main artificial lakes that are located within alpine landscape. And these artificial lakes embedded in the landscape that were built in past are somehow helping us to bring the importance of water in the landscape, whether to its natural habitat or as a main resource of hydropower generation. And reflecting on all of this through the climate change and its impact on the landscape, students use these emergent problematics in order to create or propose a future scenario. So I'm inviting Team 5 to share their screen.
So, hello everyone. We want to talk about the area of the Gepassspeicher and our title called Mycelium, Strategies for New Alpine Infrastructure. And now I want to give you a small introduction. The Gepassspeicher water reservoir is located in the Kaunertal next to the Ötztals, and the maximum reservoir volume is 138 million cubic meter of water, which is more or less 53 times the volume of the Cheops pyramid. The project area of 10 by 10 kilometers is divided in two zones along the valley. The eastern neighboring Natura 2000 protected zone, of which 93% consists of permanent snow and ice coverage, alpine and subalpine grassland, but also coniferous woodland and more.
So in the Alps, the thawing of permafrost grounds slowly disestablished the mountain slopes. In 2007, the Blickferner on the east side of the valley slid 20 centimeters a day, visibly cracking the glaciated slope structures, speeding up the process of glacier melting. This increased the probability of a sudden landslide into the reservoir, but also negatively impacts the biodiversity in the area of the Gepassspeicher. Next slide, please. Since the Kaunertal Valley is an area without many rainfalls, the processing climate changes may result in an even drier climate. Next slide, please. As you can see in the infrared picture, we can see the vegetation in around the area of the Gepassspeicher. The increasing lack of water will further impact biodiversity and overall stability of the ground. In a summary, higher temperatures result in greater slope slidings and erosions, which lead to loss of vegetation. Next slide, please. Here we have a picture with contour lines, which should structure the area around the Gepassspeicher a little bit more. Yes.
So I will continue. Our solution, we like to deal with the regional avalanche and the landslide problematic. We propose two strategies actually. So firstly, for the sensitive reforestation, emerging from detailed satellite mapping and planting trees at accessible parts of mountains that are not too steep, could additionally benefit in water absorption, moisturizing and therefore stabilizing the ground by its roots. We have a short video on the slide to show you the area with all its parts. Yes, next slide, please. To stabilize the steepest areas of the valley with little accessibility, we propose a solution of local inoculation of structures of mushrooms, creating an underlayer of connective networks. This would create an underground mycelium network, naturally stabilizing the ground and preventing it from sliding. These networks would also absorb and save excess water. On the next slide, you can see the green cubes are, they show the steep areas, so the steepest areas where we would also plant the mycelium. In the next picture, next slide, please. Yeah, in the next picture, you can see the less steeper slopes, just for clarification. And on the next slide, you can see the yellow parts. It's the flat areas where we would also plant trees to absorb water and moisturize and therefore stabilize the ground.
So mycelium is the root system beneath the earth that can become quite large, which really depends on the amount of nutrients there is in the soil, but also on the mushroom's needs. So the largest network, as far as we know, which is also the largest organism that we have on this planet, is 965 hectares big, which, as funny as it is the exact same size as on the right-hand side, the pictures, which is 10 by 10 kilometers, so 10 square kilometers. The mycelium cleans pollutants from soil and water and can extend to more than 300 miles down into the earth, which makes it excellent at taking in and breaking down hydrocarbons. So normal mycelium growth can range up to 12 millimeters a day, and the minimum being 6 millimeters a day, which if you factor in the amount of time that is from planting to the future problems that we're going to try to solve, is more than enough time. Mycelium is a powerful organic structure that can further enhance the health of local vegetations, as they can cure sickness in other plants simply because they live off of the bacteria that makes other plants sick. Additionally, the mycelia can help the plants grow bigger and also stronger by helping their roots reach water and nutrients further down in the soil. Research has also shown that, for example, tomato plants that are planted with mycelium mushrooms in the same pot or in the same area, that they make tomato plants bigger, and so they produce much more fruit, which could further cause a new positive change in the local farming and agriculture, creating a more chemical-free and also sustainable food production. So, and it is also very important to note that on the right-hand side, we can see a mycelium network, a second mycelium network. And where there is a lot of vegetation. So, as stated before, we are going to plant mycelium in those very steep areas, represented in green once again. But since landsliding is not always preventable, and
I think we lost Christopher. I was losing.
I think he's here.
Yes.
Yeah, you are
I'm
here,
here,
but we lost the presentation, and I was also losing your voice. So just.
Where have I stopped? Does anybody know?
Just summarize. Just continue.
Okay. So in the real end, we're having three benefits for the whole area that mycelium can bring to it, which actually makes me wonder why they didn't already do so. So first of all, we're having this increase in structural integrity and structural stability in the very steep slopes. On the other hand, we're having cleaner soil, cleaner water, more growth in just plants and vegetation that is already there. And on the third hand, we're having also the possibility for, once again, having farming and having agriculture in these areas, which, because of droughts and the overall dryness, which was mentioned before, historically, was not really able up to this point. So I would really like to see those changes in the landscape. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Since like traditionally I'm jumping the first and breaking the silence. So,
Go ahead.
I can jump in. Yeah, beautiful work. I really love it. I think there is I really like the topic of mycelium. I really think that it's a magic system which is interconnecting the whole ecosystem. It's like a really beautiful topic that you're investigating, also like to protecting the erosion with this fibers of the mycelium. And I think that all the drawings that you're introducing on the larger scale are really, really like beautiful, and they're working and discussing the topic quite well. And also this kind of these fibers that you're introducing also like working in a certain sense. I would also suggest you to work more with some architectural like indicators of the scale and the specifications, which will help us to navigate through the drawings now and read them better. And like think that your slide need basically to talk instead of yourself. We need to study the drawing and understand it without you talking over it. So, and I like when you were presenting in the middle of the presentation, I was thinking, okay, basically we need to jump the scale in order to start discussing the actual maybe strategy for seeding or the distribution of the mycelium on the site. And I see that you actually jump the scale, but while jumping the scale, maybe you are missing, like you're losing the resolution. And that's never the case when you can just zoom and start discussing same drawing. No, because basically all the more strategical patterns that you are kind of investigating on your large scale are readable on the micro or like just on the meso scale when you're jumping from one scale to another one, because basically all this even the line that you're drawing in these type of drawings are just becoming enormously gigantic on the scale when you zoom. So, and basically you are losing a lot of data, you're losing a lot of quality, you're losing a lot of resolution of the information that you are discussing. And I would suggest you to work a bit more carefully in between these two scales and introduce new layers of information when you are zooming. And this will help you to start creating real kind of project strategy. How do you seed this mycelium? How do you control it? How does it work with the current ecosystem? Does it collaborate with the trees which are present in this area and creating this stronger patterns of mycorrhiza, which is actually protecting the land erosion? And that's just the way how I would approach it as if you would be developing this project next. And again, I think that this topic really deserves of the further investigation in the longer project in the next studio. So I hope that you will be capable, guys, to continue with the research. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Maybe I can just add a couple of things to this, because I was really inspired by what Maria was saying. But then just a very brief introduction about the drawings. I think they're really beautiful, particularly like this one that we are looking at here on the right. Even though when you had it large, I was wondering, what is this proximity network doing? What is these yellow lines and things? So somehow it's very, very important that you guys start to kind of introduce some, something that map your drawings so that we can all kind of read without having to really ask. But beside that, I think in terms of, if you were at developing further this project in the next term, and how would I do if I would be in your position? And I think that mycelium, it's a beautiful, beautiful topic, but the moment you start to kind of talk about subterranean networks. And I mean, it immediately comes to me like, okay, but how does this actually grow? What's the section? You know, I know that all of these projects, they're looking at terrain with this very kind of satellite view. You know, and that gives it a lot of power and clarity, and they are super interesting. But like when you kind of deal with that topic, I think it's difficult not to kind of, I think you have to dig in the logic of how it actually grow underground, if it makes sense what I'm saying. So it's like, it's something that happened at the micro scale, but also at the large scale, probably. And I mean, how do you kind of scale that networking that is microscopic to, you know, to reach large? How does it interact with trees? I mean, as Maria was saying, like, again, you know, I mean, if we go back to the basic representations of architecture, there would be sections. Perhaps, or maybe there is a way to actually represent all of this information three-dimensionally, or you know, projecting them to this plane. Again, I think you are learning like quite a lot of how to, because obviously this is a tree, is a mount, you know, you have mountains, but you have a way to represent it in a way that we can still kind of read the heights. And read actually kind of the steepness, and you've done that wonderfully. I mean, can you kind of start to speculate how you could actually translate potential like three-dimensional organization of this mycelium underground onto like a similar bidimensional representation? I think that would be brilliant, for instance. So just an idea, just to complicate the matter a little bit further. But yeah, otherwise, very, very nice project, and I think very effective. I mean, in a way, I think also perhaps what you want to think of is like, so it seems very much already like solution oriented. So you have a problem, you are actually finding a solution. But maybe, you know, what you want to think of next is like, how can you through design actually, you know, suggest a range of opportunities more than kind of find just one simple solution that solves more like an engineering problem. Yeah, so how this actually become, how does this design actually can make it better and offer more opportunity than only kind of offering engineering solution? I think that would be like the other point for you guys, but very nice.
Yeah, maybe I jump in 1 second. I think it's like really the drawings, they look so competent already, which is pretty cool. Like they look really neat and precise, and in that sense they are I think very beautiful, and but not in the superficial sense. I think they begin to reveal some, you know, organizational principles and systems in the landscape, in the territory, that you don't really see so clearly without them. So in that sense, I think they are really already suggesting a way in which you can use these drawings as a tool of discovery. But perhaps the aspect that I found more interesting is that towards the end of your presentation, after illustrating to us how your proposal makes a lot of sense under many point of views, you ask yourself, I wonder why, you know, they haven't done it yet, right? And I think that is a really good question. I think maybe actually in trying to answer that question, you could find a really interesting narrative for your project as well. Like in a sense that often things that make a lot of sense don't happen for many reasons, but when you approach a project that operates across the scales in the way yours does, like where, for example, you begin to discuss about structures that happen at the almost microscopical scales, like in the case of the Mycelium's network, and compare them to structures that happen at the territorial scales, like in the cases of these territorial networks. You know, you basically span disciplines that very rarely talk to each other, right? And because you have on one side you're entering the realm of geography, on the other side you're entering the realm of microbiology, for example, right? And so I think that already gives a whole new purpose to your project, which, for example, I think exceeds the narrative that you have been illustrating, and that, like Anarita was suggesting, tends to be a little bit on the kind of problem solving kind of things, which, there's nothing wrong with that. I think, I appreciate that you're actually trying to make a contribution, a positive contribution. But, the reason why this is not happening yet, more often than not, is precisely because the knowledge required for that to happen, it's just not there in the same room, right? And so I think that in a way, the power of your drawings, the power of the kind of design that you're doing, even in just like such a short time, is that it shows there is a possibility for a design, and in this case, I say design in a very broad sense, to become a medium for this type of knowledge to converge and to begin to collaborate in crafting new ways of engaging with the landscape and engaging with the issues that we are facing collectively. So again, this goes down to the questions of, what does a territory like the one you are drawing share with a mycelium network, right? I mean, are there logics that these two very different kind of systems share, or are there logics that we can extract from one system that can be applied to the other, or can drive policies and intervention to the other? So then, it is not just a question of like, oh, let's go all together and, plant mycelium in the wood, which we may well do, but it's also really about, how do we think about such a large area, such a vast area? How do we coordinate the effort to remediate such a vast area, perhaps following some of the principles that we may learn from the way an organism like mycelium operates, right? And in that sense, then you begin to realize that you need to bring knowledge, quite sophisticated knowledge from different disciplines, different fields, and create a communication channel between these. And your drawing techniques have the power to do that, and your design intention and abilities have the power to do that. So in that sense, you can already begin to see a role for design that is very significant, and it goes beyond, just taking inspiration from nature to do something funky, but really is in the realm of bringing an original contribution to knowledge by crafting new channels of communication between disciplines that would not normally be able to talk to each other. And in that sense, really coordinate a new ways of operating in the territory, in the landscape that we haven't been able to do up until now.
Thank you. As Heather said, very beautiful drawing, very proficient narrative, and it's a I guess you've been seeing, I don't know if you knew about mycelium before, or which one your question were. This is something I would be curious to know. And also one good things to do from now on when you study is to have reference inside Mycelium project and mycorrhiza. So this technique of consolidating the soil is something we have worked extensively in the lab. So I guess you've been seeing some of the project. The fact that as a first year group, you managed to acquire so much knowledge and drawing in so short time is commendable. But when do you join us next time? When is the next course you have with us? Because we need to visit now. I mean, if a first year group managed to achieve this proficiency in, drawing it and metabolizing the narrative, then next step, we just build it. Because, we take a window then when they allow us to meet, and we build it. I think the best time is spring, I would say. So these days and time, it's really important. And this is something that is really also inherent in the way we work. The question of prototyping, as was pointed out by some of the people that commented before, the reason why this doesn't happen is often because, biologists do research on 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter as a span. Engineers don't deploy or develop visual language or don't speculate on what the effect of certain type of intervention on the landscape will have on the landscape itself. So it's really in the architecture, landscape design, urban design realm, that this form of intervention can take place, but to be able to then go out there by the time you are 50 year and implement this, you need to have a different level of understanding also of the material system and the materials and the morphological implication, as well as Maria knows very well, other implication and landscape and more four-dimensional implication that this type of project will have. I was saying Maria because in the potential she has a project in which she used wood, 3D printed, and then end up having this smellscape that we were not envisioning at the beginning. That was also an interesting part. Of course, also algae and mycelium, they have their own effect. So a really important part to be able to then stand for your project when you are out there and be able to implement it in a design-oriented manner is to have a deeper level of understanding also of the materiality of the effect that could have at the small scale and at the large scale. So if some of you is interested, I'm really interested. As for me, the next step while you grow in your curriculum is really building this landscape out there. Start to choose the plot.
Thank you, Claudia, and everyone for beautiful comments. I have to say, actually, I didn't show students any previous example of student work on mycelium, and all the research they have done on their own. So that was also interesting to see. And I've seen on the student group also big desire to sort of continue with the research, and they were even proposing, as Anarita was saying, this kind of three-dimensional view. They were eager to sort of show that, but I was, maybe in the next course, exactly like Claudia was saying. I think we would be really happy to have all of you who are listening back to explore these topics for longer period than 5 weeks. So thank you so much. You can stop sharing your screen, and we can move on to a group from Stefan and Vadim. Please also introduce your brief shortly.
Well, hello, my name is Stefan. I'm currently working on the PhD thesis with Professor Claudia Pasquero, and my research data and their evaluation in the realm of digitization and urban landscape are seen as a integral part of these environments, and in terms of digital transformation, they are also seen as a tool for designing them. For the Potenziale 3 exhibition, which opened this autumn, I developed, along with Vadim Smakin, a small project represented in a film, and was in an intriguing discussion with Vadim since then, which is continuously going on. And this term we have been able to do this course for our students. And this course was certainly influenced by our discourses. Well, in this design studio, we have been focusing on a central alpine region where city and countryside interlock. We have started with larger urban scale territories, and after initial analysis, proceeded to smaller areas for detailed interventions in some cases. We selected mid-scale towns, smaller conglomerates embedded in dense networks of infrastructure facilities.
And I will just add that during the course, we worked with the 3 types of information. So we worked with the landscape, like we are getting it from orthophoto, for example. We also worked with the data layers, and also we were working with synthesized information. And we put specific reports to teach students how to work with this synthesized information, how to interpret this information, how to integrate it into the project. So we invite our group 3 to present. You're welcome.
Also, for the other jury, I wanted to add that now we are shifting to a little more advanced students who are still first year, but already third course. So a little bit more advanced. You can share your screens.
All right. Hey guys. First of all, thanks for having us. I hope you all can hear me through the mask fine, because we're sitting at the uni. So yeah, while we tested the presentation, we realized that sometimes it occurs a delay between the voiceover and the slides. So we prepared a film with a voiceover. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. Can you hear it?
Sorry.
I couldn't hear the sound.
All right, so we have to share the sound with you as well. We just
You have to
realized.
tick the box with share the audio thing.
Super, sorry for the inconvenience.
Hello everyone and welcome to our presentation of Jenbach as a sustainable forestry city with futuristic transportation abilities. Jenbach is a market town with about 7,000 residents located in the Lower Inn Valley, 35 kilometers east of the Tyrolean capital Innsbruck in Austria. It is surrounded by the foothills of the Karbendel and Rofan-Gebirge and lies south of Lake Aachen. With its historical focus on transportation, as well as processing mineral and natural resources, we aim for revolutionizing the economy of Jenbach and its living standards. Concerning decreasing mineral resources and exceeding traffic all over the world, we are willing to shift Jenbach into said sustainable forestry city with futuristic transportation abilities. To achieve such measures, the forest must be protected and its area much increased. Trees and other plants or mushrooms must be planted to sustain a natural and healthy environment. The growth of these plants is induced by intelligent water systems to ensure a healthy development. Besides that, the mountains provide a steady water source.
Most important in this process is not only to rely on single species, but to create a richness in diversity to avoid monocultural green deserts. As wood is an important climate-neutral resource if regrowth is secured, and the only resource Europe has in sufficient quantities, it needs to be protected and strengthened. With increasing the space for forests, humans need to withdraw from that space more and more, to create a more balanced side-by-side living. We suggest removing several streets and hiking paths, and therefore giving nature more space. A pleasant side effect will be the reduction of air and litter pollution, and destruction of nature to humans. Still, the mobility of local citizens and tourists need to be sustained. For this reason, underground tunnels can be installed inspired by Louise Kieselbach and the LVCC loop system. There will be straight tunnels for express train connections and smaller ones for other transportation.
The first catalogue shows the area around Jenbach in 2021. So what is meant by this? The current air in Jenbach is very polluted. The reason for this are the many traffic roads and also some factories, but especially the highway which runs diagonally through the area. In the second picture below, you can see the current road network. It is quite dense. The two pictures on the right show the current heat distribution and the present forest area in the image below. But what will happen to the area if nothing continues to be changed in environmental protection? In 30 years, the temperature will warm by at least 3 degrees. In addition, air pollution will also worsen. Due to the rising temperatures and air pollution, the condition of the forest will deteriorate greatly. Since the current forest consists of only a few different species, it is also very susceptible to disease. An example would be the bark beetle. As a result, the forest will be greatly reduced and a forest dieback will begin. So in order to protect the area, something needs to be changed. In summary, a primeval forest must be created for the future of Jenbach. In a healthy primeval forest, however, there is not only a diversity of trees and shrubs. Mushrooms are also essential for a healthy forest. The mycelium of the different species of fungi will extend underground over the entire area. This also restores the health of the soil and allows many more species to grow naturally. In this catalogue, you can see the spread of different types of fungi. For example, the chanterelle on the top left or the toadstool next to it on the right.
The fourth catalogue shows a three-dimensional distribution of the suggested plant cultivation. We start in the lowest parts of the valley with deciduous trees and keep mixing in conifers with increasing height profile. The highest areas will be populated with different kinds of bushes and ferns. In this next visualization, we show the distribution in a two-dimensional view over the map. In this top view, we highlighted the different types of plants by colorizing the diversities. The last catalogue of this presentation shows the future traffic network that is planned. The first image pictures the tunnel system for high-speed traveling in dashed lines, while the slower traffic is visualized in the second graphic. Both systems combined can be seen in the third slide of the upper row. In the second row, you can see the degradation process of the current street network going from a lot of paths on the left to a less dense above-ground traffic system on the right. We now finish our presentation with a before and after picture of Jenbach's development. Thanks for your persistent attention. We are super happy to answer questions and hear your feedback now. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Hey, the citizens of that village are in for a big shock. I mean, you're going heavy-handedly, I can see. But listen, I don't understand very well the idea for all the tunneling. Like, are these part of the European kind of network, like a high-speed rail network, or where do they go? Like, what are all these tunnels basically doing?
So we are actually looking forward to connect most of the parts, maybe even worldwide or just at least internationally, because we decided to withdraw the humans from the forest areas, but we need to take them somewhere. We need the traffic somewhere. That's why we decided to, maybe go this futuristic way of showing the tunnels or using a tunnel system.
Why do you need the traffic somewhere? Like, can't we just think of a different way of moving around rather than using? Because I understand, I mean, if there are international rail system, then it's one thing to say, okay, let's push them underground, could be an idea. But if we are talking about local traffic, maybe there is other solutions to the tunnels, right? And also, I'm not so sure if I understand the tunnels, how they work. Like, are you planning to actually excavate in the ground, or you are thinking of building like a sort of second landscape on top?
Now we would go underneath the ground. So the dashed ones are for fast travel and long distance, and the undashed ones, the curvy, bigger ones, are for the local traffic. And we just wanted to put it all underneath the earth so that the forest up above the ground can just regrow and get bigger.
I see. Well, I understand the objective, but I think the solution maybe is a little bit let's say counterintuitive, in a sense that normally digging tunnels and creating big infrastructure underground comes with quite a lot of impact on its own. Like, it's not an operation that you do lightly, no? In fact, it's pretty heavy engineering. you will have to create a lot of excavation, you create a lot of detritus, emissions, you will have to have a lot of servicing tunnels, aeration tunnels, you know, and so on and so forth. So it's not like a kind of neutral operation in that sense. No, so in that, you know, maybe it's important that when you look at your drawings, especially your drawings that in some parts have a really beautiful quality in terms of the pixelation and the kind of finesse of the resolution. Then obviously you compare that with your main strategy of tunneling with these kind of big chunky lines. I think it's already evident in the drawing itself that there is a completely different approach to these two aspects. And so maybe the way you think about connecting or reconciling these two needs to be clarified, because they seem to be kind of pulling in rather different directions in that sense. So that is maybe the comment that I would do, especially when it comes to this main strategy of yours. The reforestation strategy makes quite a lot of sense, and I think the drawings themselves are nice because they are very specific. They reach quite a high level of resolution, which is interesting in itself. Like normally you hear about planting millions of trees, but it's always very generic. So I appreciate that you started to develop a strategy for engaging with this idea of reforestation that is much more specific, much more detailed, high resolution, almost one tree at a time. I think that's very nice. The idea of actually being able to manage a reforestation process, like really where each and every tree has its own informational logic and address, and you know, it has its own properties, different species, etc., etc. So all that I really appreciate. I cannot see how that connects or reconcile with the other strategy of the tunneling. Maybe that's my main comment. But anyway, it's a good effort. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks. Very good drawing, and I do agree with the comment before. I particularly appreciate as well the fact that you work on the biodiversity in terms of landscape and different multiple species. I think what will be relevant to do as a next step is to understand also the ecology or the interconnection between the different species. So how they feedback one to the other. So not to understand them as layer, maybe with different color, but more as a system that feedback one into the other. Maybe using video could also be a way to understand this interrelationship in the future. But thank you.
Yeah, I do agree with the comments of Marco and Claudia. I also had this question to the, you're saying that the tunneling is like this futuristic approach. I wouldn't say it futuristic. I would say that futuristic approach, I would consider to find a relationship with this area and finding maybe different approaches of the distribution of the traffic that maybe would be a bit more futuristic rather than digging the mountain, which was kind of, yeah, as Marco mentioned, quite a heavy intervention on the site. So, and yeah, this step of overlapping with these dashed lines, even graphically, I think the drawing itself could start talking to you, and you need to look maybe more and evaluate what you've done in terms of the drawing and think what actually works and what doesn't work, because the drawing itself might suggest to you different type.
What happened?
I think Maria is losing the connection.
Yeah.
Let's see if we get her back.
Maybe I can.
Meanwhile, yeah, you can continue, but
yeah, sorry. If that's
go ahead.
okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. If she comes back, I mean, I'm to be honest, I was trying to. Unfortunately, I think this project, the conversation was still very much by this specific slide that you guys are actually kind of proposing as a final, solution or a proposal for your project, and a little bit it's kind of, I mean, at least for me, because I was kind of focusing more on this, and I agree with what have been said, so I won't be repeating it particularly, but I mean, I think that if we can trace back to the moment where this connection happened, and it's particularly, I think the project was super strong, and thank you so much for for doing the effort of putting it into a video. I mean, it was super well presented, and with really, really nice graphics, till you kind of started to all your analytical part was outstanding, I thought. I mean, till you kind of get to kind of narrow down the issue of the area, no? And somehow here we have like, I think what you are missing here is to kind of speculate really on the range of opportunities that you have through the tools that you have, because you're at a certain point, you're kind of, and I missed that a little bit, but you're kind of discussing a little bit this idea of the mycelium. You have these beautiful slides with the growth of different fungi, and then this is the solution. And what happens here most likely is that those lines are kind of hand drawn. There is no real intelligence into how this is emerging out of your system. And I think what you probably need to learn from this conversation for the future is that somehow, you've done all this work on building this very rich systemic reading of the territories, and the expectation is that you bring the same level of complexity and intelligence into your design proposal as well. So I think that's, if you probably would have kind of used these agencies that you were starting to propose, their intelligence with the same level of richness of the graphic that you have demonstrated before in the analytical part, more as a proposition, that would have been kind of brilliant to see. Maybe we could have seen this network of new viability for what is needed, because obviously here the big question is like, how many cars do we really need here? I mean, that's the bottom line. That's the criticality with everybody here listening to this presentation is kind of have to respond to. But if we put that aside, certainly you can kind of rethink somehow that network, and why you are doing it, and what type of drivers you're using it into your proposal in order to do so. So that's kind of not there, as well as not there the logic, the description of the logic that you would use to do so. It's just kind of more suggested, perhaps, for what I understood from your presentation. I mean, that's it for me, if we haven't recovered Maria in the meantime.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike.
That she's back.
But we still seem to be losing you, Maria.
Yeah, my internet got crashed for certain reason. Well, okay, I will check my connection meanwhile.
Okay, I think, Maria, if you would have any other sort of final comments for the team, you can also drop it in the chat. I wanted to connect to also a little bit the previous comments that we were hearing, because somehow I don't remember the image anymore, but maybe I think it was one slide back. I'm not completely sure. There was also different analysis of here. So there was another sort of drawing, the one that is below, that was showing a little bit more complex and rich study of the network. So I was wondering why this future reduced street network that we see on the bottom right actually does not appear also in the drawing, whereas we only see the sort of the other image. So for the sort of achievement of hiring the resolution of the proposed infrastructure, it would be good to see on the final drawing maybe different layers that are that you have extracted, because you have done that work here. And I also wanted to congratulate you, and I especially enjoyed the slide and the work that you did on cataloging of all the species populating the landscape. I think this was a really outstanding approach. And maybe we could move on to the last team from Filippo Nasetti, and he can introduce his
Hi. So my name is Filippo Nasetti, and I taught the last unit that we're going to see today. Bit of introduction on the brief. The title is Post-Natural Landscapes. The idea in a nutshell is that students are provided with a toolkit of terrain modeling skills and tools in Houdini, and then they start playing around with such tools while they research on landscapes. So the type of research that they do is like looking at the existing type of landscapes, trying to understand how such landscapes are shaped, how they can support ecosystems of life, and also looking at activities that can be supported by that. The idea of landscape is also explored in a wider way. So beyond looking at what we generally understand as landscape, like, I don't know, glaciers and deserts and mountainscapes and so on, students are also invited to expand their view. And for instance, some groups in the past looked at images from the microscope, trying to reinterpret them at landscape, so playing with scale. But also, and that's in line with the project that we're going to see today, going outside planet Earth and looking at other type of alien landscapes. So given in the last years, there was an abundance of images from space, like from outer planets and so on, from NASA. I thought it would have been a good idea to also start looking at that as a reference for design and try to create briefs onto that. So the type of briefs that the students did in the unit move from the research, and then they try to craft a scenario which is grounded in that research, but really looking at that as a scenario of change. So how the reference landscape can be transformed in time, and how a possible intervention, a possible operation to that may craft it. So I leave the word to the students. I chose this project, among others, because of the brief. I think it was interesting, and we're going to look at the colonization of Mars. So guys, you can go ahead, please.
Hello, can we start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Welcome to our presentation, Colonization of Mars. First, we want to give you a little introduction about our presentation. We will first show you how the surface of Mars looks like. Then we will talk about the colonization could look like. After that, we will tell you about the Nordic labyrinths, and we'll finally show you our analysis. The surface of Mars. Like Earth and Venus, Mars has mountains, valleys, and volcanoes. For example, at the Terrace region, where you can find the Olympus Moon volcano, which is the largest volcano at our solar system. Besides that, Mars has one of the biggest rift systems of all our solar system too, the Valles Marineris, which you can see from space. Over 3 million years ago, the surface of Mars was covered with rivers, lakes, and seas. These early water mansions are responsible for the structure of the surface of today. For example, riverbeds and bays can still be clearly recognized, as well as former beaches and erosion. Nowadays, the surface of Mars consists only of 2% of water. Crustal movements, as well as impact craters and atmospheric conditions such as dust storms, have altered the landscape of Mars over many years. The topography of Mars differs from the northern hemisphere, which is characterized by flatlands, and the southern hemisphere, which is dominated by plateaus. The soil on Mars does not have organic matters like the soil on Earth. The mineral matter in Martian soil comes from watered volcanic rock, which make up to 89% of the planet. It has clay and silt-sized particles, but it is overall a sandy soil. There is also a thin surface layer of very small dust particles.
For our project, we imagined a future scenario where the Mars is colonized by humans. On Mars, the humans will live in housing facilities which have breathable air. Such constructions are also used as greenhouses to harvest food. The different facilities will be connected by tubes to enable fast and easy movement. The needed energy for that will be generated through solar panels, and there will be furthermore robots that are used to find and extract resources from Martian soil, such as water and oil for fuel. To design a landscape which will suit our idea of the colonization, we took the Noctis Labyrinthus as an inspiration. It is a group of intersecting canyons which form part of a complex graben system. This system is formed due to extensional tectonics. During the process, intense volcanism led to the formation of a bulk, resulting in tectonic stress. This caused the crust to thin out and form graben structures, which elongated, trench-like features bounded by parallel normal faults. To better explain our scenario, we have created a catalog divided into 3 categories: thermal erosion, a combination of thermal erosion and hydroerosion, and a combination with terraces. We stopped the frames at different values to see how the landscape changes over time. As you can see, thermal erosion doesn't change very much. We also imagine that humans could find a Martian landscape that looks like this. With the combination, something more is already happening. This is how it might look like if humans have already colonized Mars and found a way to water. That life on Mars is easier and people can move better, we imagine that they build terraces. In the catalog, we have shown how they could process over time. To help you see the difference, we have also created a catalog of perspectives. For analyzing the different erosions, we colored our model in a Martian look. The color tones represent the different activities that take place. The first color shows where the housing facilities could be. In total, it explains where the life takes place. The places for the second color indicate where facilities for energy production could be built. The last color explains the places where resources could be mined. The analysis of the model with the thermal erosion shows that at the beginning, there are many and large flat areas that would be suitable for housing facilities. For solar panels and robotic mining, there are still few suitable places. A combination of both erosions could be the result of running water brought by humans to the red planet. The eroded surface offers more space for robotic mining and solar panels. Unfortunately, it goes with the loss of space that can be used for living facilities. The terrace erosion is a landscape we imagine to be formed by humans over time. The built-up terraces are being used as living spaces, whereas the water-formed landscape is still used for energy generation and robotic mining.
We have compared the three erosions and a big difference can be seen. We believe this change could make it easier and safer for humans to live on Mars. The areas for solar plants and robotic mining are becoming more and larger, whereas suitable areas for living facilities are becoming less. However, humans still have enough space to move around and do possible activities. As humans arrive on Mars, we also imagine an increasing amount of living microorganisms taking place. To analyze this, we projected the bacteria on our model and divided the process into three phases. In phase 1, there is still little bacteria activity. It is taking place when the humans first start exploring this area of Mars. In phase 2, the bacteria starts to increase throughout more human activity in that area. They mainly settle in darker areas where they are more protected from the sunlight. As the humans start to inhabit the landscape, the bacteria is moving towards the areas which have the least human activities. These are mainly areas with solar panels and steep slopes. When comparing all three phases, you can clearly see the bacteria naturally growing in the first two phases. The last phase stands out and shows in contrast how the human activities impacts the landscape. Colonizing Mars will be much more difficult than we make it out to be in our scenario. However, we think that our scenario could be a possibility and shows a way how to adapt to the Martian landscape. Thank you for listening to our presentation.
Hey guys, I think this is like a fascinating scenario to work with, because obviously it's the kind of this is a sort of dream of having like a sort of clean sheet, almost like to terraform and to program, which is obviously, as we know, is a dream that, you know, several billionaires today find irresistible. And so, I mean, I guess there is a market for your project as well. But my question, and again, I think I found it really intriguing the way you have deployed this simulation technique to highlight how the process may take place, and somehow the aspect that I kind of was not particularly excited about was the sort of narrative that seemed to be quite fixated with a few typological elements, such as the solar panel or the robotic mining and so on, which ended up becoming rather disconnected from the actual forces that your drawing or your simulations are capable of reproducing or exploring. And so, in that sense, perhaps the narrative connected to the bacteria is the one that is more intriguing, although maybe the representation with these red dots may be a little bit crude. But I found it intriguing, because I think that it would be fantastic for me to think that if you are colonizing a new planet from scratch, you know, rather than bringing up there the technologies that are somehow ruining the planet in which we live, which is essentially mining and you know, the production of systems like solar panel or wind turbines that, you know, apparently are green, but essentially are pieces of kits that are impossible to recycle and to remetabolize and so on, and so essentially leave waste and on their streak. You know, I think it's intriguing to imagine a process which I think your drawing suggests very beautifully of terraforming this new planet through means that are biodigital and are essentially inherently circular in terms of the way they can you know, create a new terrain, a new form of diversity of forms and perhaps also of ecosystems. And so, yeah, I mean, my suggestion would be to kind of reassess your narrative in that sense, to perhaps kind of highlight the nature of the simulation that you're showing, that you have engaged with, and in a sense maybe bring that kind of dynamic, non-linear, iterative logic to the forefront as an exemplification of how we may be, you know, going along in terraforming a new planet, which, you know, in this case is Mars, but, you know, to a certain extent could also be you know, a kind of a ecosystem on Earth that you know, that has a certain characteristics.
Yeah, I was extremely excited by this project. I found the topic very poetic and very suggestive. And, you know, I was really, I mean, I agree with Marco, absolutely. And I also like, in the sense of what these elements that are not really part of the project somehow, and they, you know, despite you're trying to kind of fit them into the narrative, this sort of man-made or technology, they're not kind of really coming together with the rest of what you are presenting somehow. But I was also thinking, like, in a way, it reminded me a little bit. I recently worked on a project in virtual reality, and my experience, I mean, I'm used to work as an architect, and my experience in kind of having to deal with this sort of completely virtual space, which, you know, you live only this metaverse, that you live only when you're kind of disconnected from the rest. So it's not augmented, but it's actually completely virtual. Is that you literally have to design and to code every single thing. I mean, everything. So there is not this sort of experiential overlay that you have whenever you kind of place a piece of design in its environment. It's just simply not there. And I'm so used to that I found that extremely, you know, it just kind of made me reflect a lot about it and try to position myself. And somehow, speaking about Mars, it made me kind of thinking the same mindset, where you are actually kind of very, I mean, I guess there are a series of environmental conditions there, which are, but the fact that they are so different from the one that we have here, and the fact that we don't have the ability to experience, if not through the eye of the photography of the videos that we have of the planet, it makes it a completely like artificial, in a way, a constructed culturally, that's total culture, technologically constructed type narrative. So we know the planet, and I know the planet, I know nothing about Mars, but I know it from what you guys are telling me, and from you know, and from the agencies that you are setting up in terms of your ability to actually modify this landscape. And I think that's really special about this project. It's complete artificiality in a way. I think that in that sense, therefore, you really have to measure and to make like informed decision about what are these elements of this system and why you're kind of, why, I mean, for instance, why, I mean, you're talking about erosion, there is thermal erosion, terrace erosion. Terrace erosion, I understand it's something that you understand as a sort of man-made what about like wind, which I imagine is actually like another critical condition there. But you know, and I'm assuming like I mean, you talk kind of about the idea of solar plants, but you're not looking at that environmentally, so you're not kind of seeing at where, you know, the sun, when it's actually impacting this specific area, how that would affect perhaps this system of inhabitation. I mean, somehow it's coming up when you work with bacteria, because you have this shadow area. So somehow I think the project would totally benefit of a bit more critical and clear set of rules and parameters that you are applying. And but it's extremely promising. I really like it. So I mean, and that some of the visuals are really, really nice. So well done. I mean, it's a very nice work.
I don't know if I can jump in because my internet is not really stable. If you can follow me or not. Can you hear me at least? Okay, I go on. So yeah, I joined the comments. I think the topic is fascinating. I really love that we are now on Mars. And the erosion technique is very beautiful, and it would be interesting to see how can we evolve it. And I think Mars is actually a perfect scenario to work on that. And I was thinking, how can we maybe learn from some type of the morphologies that we can find on the different planets, etc., in order to inform the technique that we are used to use now, and how can we maybe think different scenarios. And also, I was actually, when you were presenting, I was thinking, is the condition on Mars same as on Earth? Does the erosion happen absolutely in a certain kind of same way as that would be happening in our atmosphere, or there any difference that we might take into account? And then how can we learn the structure and the morphologies and the different features of, for example, landscape on Mars in order to inform our design algorithm and then use it in order to maybe build. Now, I love this idea of the kind of bacterial invasion on the Mars, and using them as the actually construction strategy. But what if we just use this erosion technique more morphologically, and thinking how we could evolve it, and thinking, for example, comparing it with the Earth, how we are excavating, terraforming, extracting different resources from our planet. Now, can we approach Mars in a different way? How can we think on and study different kind of forces, different maybe morphologies which are present on the Earth, and thinking on the different ways of living there or building there? And I think that this technique has a great potential. So summing up my comments, and yeah, brought us a lot of thought, and also aesthetically, of course, appealing, all your techniques and the quality that you are reaching in some of the drawings and in the catalogs as well is great. Thank you. I hope you could follow the comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Thanks for the comment. Yeah, I do agree with the comment done until now. Thanks for the presentation. The drawing are really beautiful. I don't know if we are on Mars really, or whether it's necessary or not, or whether that really brings something else. But if we talk about erosion and few projects we developed in the past that could connect either to erosion and glacier for the territory around Innsbruck, or more likely to the territory you've been exploring, to the Rub al Khali Desert in between Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, or the Chott al Jayed in Tunisia, where you have a set of conditions that create a landscape that are simply amazing when you are immersed on them, and even when you look at them from the satellite, quite unlike some of the one that act as your case study. So I invite you to observe this. And interestingly enough, both these two territories are characterized on one side from human extraction of energy and power, on the other side by a presence of bacteria that grow there through the existence of water tables that are salty and interacting with the sand and the sun. They create the emergence of these bacteria colonies that transform completely the consistency of the sand and the landscape. What strikes me about the project, and I think would be developed forward, is that both looking at the case studies that you have at the beginning, then recalling my memory of being immersed in this type of landscape, I would say the last slide doesn't give it justice. Maybe some of the slides you had before were more descriptive or narrative about this specific type of phenomenon or this specific type of landscape, because the effect of the bacteria on this landscape not only is possibly a resource, the biocementation or coagulation of the landscape, but has also incredible effect in terms of colors. The sand usually range, from red to brown, and then with the presence of bacteria, it turns suddenly to white and other colors. So you have these nuances that, if you look at them from the top, they are about the relationship between matter of different consistency, but they are also an indication really of the property you are trying to analyze. So maybe what I would like to see in terms of drawing, and this is something that you all often see also when you look at the satellite image of Mars, it's these nuances of color that are material indication, information about material. While here, maybe what I would invite you to develop further, if you like to work with this territory, is one, we have tried to look at alien territory also that are near you, so that you understand more the materiality. So maybe starting from what is very near is the snow and ice formation, but then going farther on planet Earth, there are these two deserts, probably there are others that are really similar behavior or correlated behavior. On the other hand, in terms of drawing technique, I would invite you to try and experiment with color more, because in that sense, that become an information that together with the morphology, it's about the description of the landscape. While in the last image here, the information of color and the one of morphology, they are correlated, but are not really embedded. So this would be something to understand, in my opinion, on this line of project, how it can be developed further and simulated digitally. Of course, there could be also physical simulation, but in this case, on this line of project, I would say simulated digitally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I have a closing comment on this one, just to wrap up? So,
I was just about to ask for closing comments.
Yeah, no, a closing comment on that project, sorry. No, I mean, what I really liked about this project, I think the group was quite bold in choosing the topic and getting into that. And the fact that it triggers a rich discussion as it sets up a very new arena for that. So I think that was proved by the conversation that we just had. I think that was very nice. I think there are a few things that, one comment on the comment that I wanted to make is the fact that to our understanding at the moment on Mars, there is no life. And that also means that all our general assumptions about anthropic action and disruption of the ecosystem needs to be rethought quite entirely. So if we have a general idea that disrupting the landscape on planet Earth may bring ecological disruptions, that's not true on Mars as there is no life. So I think that what was interesting was setting up a tabula rasa for many type of reflections, like for instance, this one, but also, and that's one thing which I think should could be developed more moving forward is, for instance, how the erosion happens on Mars and how would be an anthropic-driven erosion. So your project clearly is not simply showing how wind or water or heat would transform the landscape of Mars in time, but how actually people going there would use probably technology that amplifies maybe certain local features and then transform the landscape through that technology. And the thing which I liked of the last slide, but I agree that needs to be developed a lot, is the idea to how you can set up an ecosystem from scratch. So the fact that the project starts from a condition where there is no ecosystem, but then the manipulations of the terrain are ways to start incepting an ecosystem onto planet Mars. So in that sense, I think that there was it's not developed in terms of drawing, but the fact that there is that sequence showing how bacteria may populate the landscape, I think has the potential to be developed, because it's probably showing the way in which there can be settlement on Mars in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments and input.
Good. So this was our last theme from today's presentation. And so I would like to welcome anyone to comment or to, if we have any finishing or wrapping up comments for students.
Or do we have any finishing or wrapping up comment from the student?
Exactly, that's a good point.
Also from the tutor. Well, of course, I congratulate everybody. I see there's been quite a lot of diversity. The department in landscape architecture is growing. So somebody has the microphone on? Yeah. So I hope we will be able to bring forward this diversity in the next year with some of the tutor and some of the students, and develop projects that are more and more consistently and becomes more applied when we go toward the thesis and eventually PhD that really tackle question of synthetic landscape and design innovation, and how this can be brought forward. We have now the exhibition here at the Potenziale in Innsbruck. In January, we will have an event with Annarita in which we are all invited down in the lab to discuss how this type of drawing and research can feed back at the PhD level. So you're all also invited as student, as you are at the beginning, to visit the exhibition in the Potenziale in Innsbruck and to join us for the event in January related to the PhD. I think this is really important, the fact that also most of our tutors are PhD students here, so that there is a connection between high-level research and students that are just beginning. We can see there is an influence in the project you've been developed from your student, but we can see also that there is a personality that emerges. This is really important about research and teaching, or teaching-based research, how you're able to give your contribution and also help us to discover a new realm that could be brought forward or could be developed as research. At the moment, we have the photosynthetic agenda that is really developed, but topic like mycelium or erosion could be a future landscape that we investigate further and start to prototype and implement out there, which I think it's our role as designers, as we discussed before. So now I gave you the time to think, so the comment.
If I can jump in, maybe. It was very interesting to see all the presentations, and congratulations to all the groups. Also, it was very inspiring to see the different groups and the different teams from the different tutors. And I think that all the ideas that was brought to the table today and maybe tomorrow, I'm eager to listen, are very bright. They project a bright future, let's say, in a way that we don't always look at the human as a central force of design, but we try to look at the ecology in general of a specific area. And I would like to thank my students as well, especially, and also will see you, most of you, at least tomorrow on the presentations from Stefan, Vadim, and Filippo. That's it from me.
I think I can join Apostolos with this comment. It was quite nice today to see presentations from different tutors from different groups. I want to thank our students from today's presentation and invite you all for tomorrow's presentation as well, where we'll see more, like a bigger diversity of the projects, which I think can be interesting.
Maybe a short comment. Thank you to our students as well, and thanks to the tutors and thanks to our studio. I think it's really enjoyable how we practice this mode of presenting and learning from each other. And I think this is a very efficient way to develop everyone's skills and abilities. At least for me, this is valid. Thank you very much.
Just a brief comment on my side. I mean, first of all, thanks for inviting me today. It was brilliant to see all of your work. I mean, what I particularly enjoyed is beautiful connection between the tutors, their their mode of research, their methods, and how all this translates in the work of their students. It was very, very refreshing to see all the different voices. And it's just a great community and a lovely kind of opportunity to see so many interesting projects. I think that it's outstanding that this topic are picked at this level on a first year. I think you guys are all very, very lucky to be part of this discourse, because I think the project they are all very, very relevant. And they are really much at the forefront of what we can imagine today in terms of imagining new way of designing and re-articulating the territories we live in, or that we also not live in yet, as we've seen for Mars. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Anna Rita, for joining us. I don't know if there are any other comment from anyone else. I wanted to also connect and congratulate all of you. I think it was very successful 5 weeks, and you have all worked hard, and it was absolutely visible on all of your projects, whether during this session or whether during the session we had in the morning. And I'm also very much looking forward to see the presentations of Vadim, Stefan, and Filippo students tomorrow. Unfortunately, our Seminar 1 students who were presenting today morning are starting tomorrow next courses, so they will probably not be able to follow the next presentations, but we are looking forward to see you in future studios and future courses to explore these topics deeper. And I also realized that we are still live streaming on YouTube, so I think I would slowly stop live streaming. And